Hi everyone, today I'm going to take a look at the lore of the Valhallan Ice Warriors. I'll draw on my experience as a former rifleman in the Australian Army to help bring to life what it'll be like for them to fight in the 40th millennium. This is the third video in a series of videos where I look at the different Astra Militarum factions, and you can check out the other two on the Catechins and Mordians in the links below. My channel covers everything Astra Militarum and I release a video every week, so please subscribe for more. Hailing from the ice world of Valhalla, located in a segmentum ultima, the Ice Warriors take inspiration from the Soviet soldiers of World War II, fighting the Germans on the Eastern Front. The Valhallans' homeworld was once a paradise world turned into a frozen wasteland by a rogue comet that crashed into it in about the 30th millennium. To make matters worse, a damaged Orc war fleet attacked the Valhallans shortly after, only to be destroyed, and the Valhallans have gone on to forever seek revenge against the dreaded Orcs. The grim resolve that the Valhallans are so famous for is born from this history of hardship. Tying back into the Soviet inspiration, being from a frostbitten environment makes them naturally very hardy people. However, the difference for the Valhallans to modern people is that their entire world is frozen all year round. There is no waiting for the heat of summer or catching a cheap flight to a tropical holiday destination. It is cold all the time, everywhere on Valhalla. And these hardened people are made even tougher by a homeworld where even the most simple of crimes is severely punished, sometimes often by death. And life is cheap, with the populace crammed into underground hive worlds where the majority of populace live off nutrient slime. Yuck. Escaping these conditions can be achieved by joining the Ice Warriors, avoiding a career as a nutrient vat worker. And Valhallan regiments are highly sought after for their obvious natural talent to operate in cold weather environments like the Catechins in the jungles, or missions that require a stubborn resolve. Interestingly, women are discouraged to join, instead meant to focus on producing more offspring with the view that they can one day go on to join the Imperial Guard Regiments. Now if we hone in on these points quickly, this really illustrates the mental makeup of the Valhallans. They came from a homeworld which is frozen all year round. Daily life is tragically cheap and uncomfortable. Women are encouraged to produce more children, and the only chance for a decent life is to face the horrors of the 40th millennium. Blimey. This is a simple reminder that for billions of human souls, the grim dark future of the 40th millennium means their day-to-day lives is pretty grim and dark, depressing. But not to get all emotional and upset, let's instead focus now on the Valhallan enjoyment of everything cold. They are known to start every morning with a splash of freezing cold water to the face, regardless of room temperature. They also run their air conditioning units at full blast, meaning anybody not Valhallan assigned to their regiments are wearing their heavy grey coats and fur hats indoors all day. Freezing cold winds that would have you and I covering up is a blissful reminder of home, and the building of snowmen is taken exceptionally seriously by the Valhallans. Now I can kind of relate to the Valhallan attitude here. I spent the first 31 years of my life in Australia, moving to the UK 5 years ago. And Australia is a country that enjoys 30-degree minimum summers, and winters that are often warmer than British summers. And on the odd occasion the weather here hits 30 degrees, all I want to do is be outside doing something physical. People think I'm crazy when I go for a run on the hottest days here, but it simply reminds me of home. And there's a real nostalgia that can come from the weather. So from a military point of view, I thankfully didn't operate too much in true cold weather environments. I never trained in the snow, but did operate at near freezing conditions. Whilst I said Australia is typically warm all year round, there are plenty of areas that become bitterly cold in the winter. Strangely, army bases always seem to be placed there, with soldiers enjoying 2-week-long field exercises slopping around in the cold. At its most basic form, operating in a cold weather environment is physically taxing. For the body to stay warm, it has to expend more energy than normal. And keeping on top of nutrition is important, with soldiers having to have at least one warm meal a day to keep at a decent operating standard. Hydration is also something that can be forgotten, with the cold fooling you into thinking that your thirst is not there. Resulting dehydration or hunger simply makes life harder. And while the abuse of a corporal or sergeant can motivate anyone quickly, it is far better if the soldier is at 100%. Of course, another major issue with the cold is the risk of illness. As I understand it, the most dangerous conditions to work in are at temperatures between 4 and -7 degrees. At this point, wet snow and rain mean troops are sloshing around in muddy, wet uniforms, which combined with poor nutrition may mean colds and coughs can take over. Don't forget as well that feet that are constantly cold and wet rapidly turn into mush, with trench foot becoming a real problem. Colder conditions are actually easy to operate in as the ground remains frozen, but movement across all temperatures is slowed and requires more effort and planning. Thick snow can slow even the heaviest of tracked vehicles and clearly makes infantry troop movement laborious. Visibility can also be hampered, with snowfall or blizzards reducing this down to a few meters. Of course, however, the most important thing to factor in for extreme cold weather is simply staying warm. Neglecting this can simply result in death, with soldiers freezing to death. The most recent example of the dangers of conducting warfare in winter conditions is the German invasion of Russia in World War II. The German army overextended its supply lines and didn't equip its troops with winter uniforms. The Soviet army soon cut off the 6th German army and consequently frontline units in the German army receiving meagre rations, often nothing more than a few slices of bread a day. Thousands of German troops died due to poor nutrition and the horrid conditions that a Russian winter brings. German corpses were often frozen in place upright and appearing to still be alive. There are plenty of war stories of German soldiers checking on comrades to find them only dead in place. Now, the Soviet army had their fair share of suffering as well. Sure, they were used to the Russian winter, but thousands died. Clearly, Valhallan law is inspired by the chaps of the Soviet army, wrapped in their thick grey coats and fur caps protecting them from the bitter cold. The idea that the Ice Warriors of Valhalla would pour wave upon wave of infantry upon the enemy comes from the stories of the Soviet troops trying to overwhelm German positions by sheer weight of human numbers. Simply speaking, the hope here is to cause the enemy to run out of ammunition or present them too many targets, allowing some Soviet troops to close in for the kill. Understanding this horror is challenging in today's attitudes and also within modern military opinion. The foundation of most modern armies is the concept of fire and movement, where you are doing one of the two whilst attacking. Either you are providing covering fire to your buddies whilst they advance, or you are closing with the enemy whilst your buddies provide covering fire for you. Wholesale charging of the enemy doesn't appear in any army doctrine documents that I know of. And from the various novels I read in research of this video, I found no evidence of this tactic being employed by the Valhallans. Instead, reading stories of individual Valhallan troops being skilled individual fighters, utilising all the cunning and care of other Imperial Guard soldiers. However, the idea of pouring wave upon wave of Valhallan upon the enemy is probably more done so at a top command level. An Astra Militarum general governing a large-scale campaign could simply continue to assign Valhallan regiments to defeat a stubborn enemy formation. Sure, individual Valhallan squads may approach and fight the enemy with genuine tactical ability, but they simply may be the 10th squad to attempt the same endeavour. But as said earlier on, life on Valhalla is cheap, and this upbringing probably means there is more of an open acceptance that one's life is due to end on the battlefield. Fighting to the bitter end is more mentally welcomed by them, and this gains them the reputation of their iron-hard resolve. Combine this with the fact that they are toughened by living in extreme cold means they are damn hard bastards. They welcome violence and are more than happy to brawl and fight amongst themselves when not on the front lines. And while I explain the challenges of fighting in extreme cold, Valhallans probably view it the same way I do as working in the Australian bush. Uncomfortable but homely. I think another thing to factor in is the possible physiological adaptations of the Valhallans. The Homeworld has been an ice war for 10,000 years. And I'm no biologist, but expect some physiological adaptations to have occurred in that time. Like the people of Scandinavia, the Valhallans all have pale skin. So what other adaptations have their bodies made against the extreme cold? So there you have it, a bit of a look at the lore of the Valhallan Ice Warriors. You can see I try to make their story somewhat more relatable to today to help bring to life their story a bit more. I'd love to hear what you think of my approach, let me know in the comments. And as said at the start, I've also done videos on the Catechins and Mordians. Links to those videos are below. The next faction I'll cover will be the Death Corps of Krieg, industrialised trench warfare at its best. I can't wait. So don't forget to subscribe. I release a video every week covering the hobby aspects, tabletop tactics and the lore of the Astra Militarum. Also, if you'd like to support me on Patreon, that'd be super cool. I really enjoy making these videos, but they're actually very time consuming to produce, so any support would be lovely. Thanks for watching, see you next time.